All right, so woke up this morning, upstairs is a little bit warm. I didn't think much of it, but it's still warm after the AC was running, and the compressor's not running. The fan's not running either. Both of them are not running, which was actually encouraging to me, because if neither the compressor or the fan out here are running, then maybe it's something simple. So just pop the cover, let's see what's in there. So this is a Trane unit from circa 2013 or so, and just pulled these two screws off to pop the cover, and the first thing I see is this capacitor that looks quite bulged, and I've replaced this capacitor in the last 3 years probably, and I do believe that I have another one because I kept a spare just in case. All right, I rummaged through the garage and I found it's got the dual cap in here, so it looks like this is a 55/5. I'm gonna go see what's in the unit. This one is a 30/5. Of course, the real question there is, what did this unit originally come with? Because the one I've got in there is definitely not stock. So I'm gonna go ahead and pop the 55-5 in there and see if everything comes back on, and then go look and see what the correct part number is. We'll go order a capacitor or two. Something to note. First thing I should do is pull the disconnect switch. So I've got both caps here, and all I'm doing is looking at the labeling for each one and moving them one to one. So that one there was labeled fan, so I moved that over. This one's hermetic, which is the compressor. So I'm gonna move these two over to this terminal. Keep in mind that these caps will hold a charge. Probably not this one since it's blown, or it appears to be blown. But you don't want to short anything out. If you really wanted to get a resistor and short out each pair of contacts to discharge the cap, you could. I'm just being really careful because I don't want to short any wires and cause a spark here. Well, there it is, reinstalled. Got my busted one here, and so let's pop this back in. The inside's already on, so we'll see if this kicks on. Fan. I don't know if the compressor kicked on though. One way to tell what's going on is to use your AC clamp meter. You can see on this one I can select between DC and AC, and I can stick a wire through here to see how much current is flowing. So this main black and red here is what's powering both the fan and the compressor, and we can see we're only pulling 0.91 amps. So I would say the fan is running, but the compressor is not. We should be pulling, it's probably like 10-15 amps or more if the compressor was running. So I'll let it run here for a minute and see if that changes. All right, that didn't work, so I'm gonna get out my trusty field piece, and what this has is a capacitor capacity measuring. I don't know, most multimeters don't have this, but this one does, and that's what I bought this one for. So we're gonna see what this start cap does, because this one, not all ACs have this, but there are two capacitors in here. This one's for starting the compressor. This one's for starting and running the fan and running the compressor. So the compressor doesn't start on this, it runs on this. And since the compressor's not starting, I'm gonna test the capacitance of this one, which physically does not appear to have a problem, but it could be there's still a problem. And you'll notice this one's got a resistor across the top of it, and that's to discharge the capacitor when it's not in use. So here we go. What is it reading OL? Figured out what I was doing wrong. I still had the wire connected to the top of the cap, so disconnected one of the wires. We're testing to 214 microfarads, and this thing is supposed to be 216 to 240. So I think that's close enough to say that it's good. So let's test this capacitor up top as well. If we disconnect, say, this one, well, I shouldn't have grounded that out, and connect from here, and this is going to be the fan one, which should be good anyway because the fan was running. So I think this is supposed to be like 5 megafarads. That's about right. Look at that, 5.0. And we'll stick that back on. keeps dropping back off. There we go. Maybe I wasn't making good contact. All right, 53, 54, 55, and that's what it's rated for, is 55. All right, so this cap that I just put in is good. The starting cap is good. And it doesn't appear to be trying to start at all, because I put the clamp meter on here and put the disconnect in. And the only current I saw was about 2.5 amps, which is probably the fan itself starting, not the compressor. So the other thing I'm worried about is maybe this little box here, which I believe is some sort of a relay to tell this capacitor to be used for a few seconds and then swap over to this one. So maybe there's a problem there. I did check, and there's 240 volts at this cap and 240 volts between common and hermetics here, which I'm not sure if there's supposed to be 240 volts on both at the same time. I should say the red leg is what's running through the capacitors, and the black leg just runs straight from my main lines up through the contactor and up to the compressor. Okay, so we're back up and running, and let me tell you what I did, because the compressor wasn't kicking on, but I pulled the fan off and went down to the compressor and measured between the 3 terminals on the compressor, because I was getting 240 volts to those. That was just fine, but the compressor wasn't turning on, which told me it was a compressor problem. I also noticed the compressor was super hot, and this is a heat pump, which means it's got this heat pump blanket, and I think it's for the winter time, covering the compressor itself. And so pulling that off, even after the unit hadn't been on for like 12 hours, it was super hot. So I was like, well, maybe hit a thermal overload switch. And sure enough, I measured the resistance. Let me show you. So that's this setting here, ohms. I measured the resistance between each of those prongs. So the bottom 2 were hots, and the top one was, I guess they're all hots, but anyway, the bottom 2 were the red and the orange wire, the top one was the black wire. So like between red and orange, I got ohms. That was fine. I got like 3 ohms. But between like orange and black or red and black, it was infinite. It was over. There was nothing. There was no connection at all to either one, which to me sounded like maybe it was a thermal switch. So I left the unit for a couple of hours, started looking at what to replace the air conditioner with. But I came back in, plugged everything back in, and it's working now. So I suspect, I don't know, I suspect the capacitor blew and the compressor overheated because the capacitor wasn't working right. And at that point, the thermal switch was tripped, and even after 12 hours, it hadn't reset. So me pulling the thermal blanket off and letting it sit for another couple hours allowed it to reset, and now it's working again. So hopefully, I haven't hurt my compressor enough that we're going to reduce its lifespan by a huge amount. So we're going to run it today. It's going to run hard because it's going to be like 106 today, and we'll see how well it runs today and tonight, and if just replacing the capacitor fixed the problem. I must say, I live in Texas. I'm walking back to the air conditioner over here. Don't worry, this is regarding the video. And I'm used to it being hot. I'm used to it being over 100 degrees. But we were in early July, hitting 110 degrees a day. And that's just brutal. The car can just barely keep up with its own air conditioning, and your ACs are running just like 8 hours at a time. It's brutal. Anyway, it's getting down to like more like high 90s to low hundreds now, and it's like, I can actually do this. I mean, I can deal with this. I still stay inside most of the time, but anyway, I'm out here at the AC compressor because it has been running like a champ, been doing great, keeping the upstairs cool, and I'm gonna check and see what the model number is on this so I can look up and see what capacitor is supposed to be in here, because I should have the right one in here, not just some random cap from my garage. Earlier in the video, I mentioned that it was a circa 2013 unit. Actually, it appears to be November of 2008, so it's a little older than that. But I should be able to look up this model number and find something about what cap to use. And regarding it actually keeping up, we're at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon right now. Upstairs is set to 76, and this AC unit's not on right now because it's actually cycling off and back on to keep it upstairs cool. good indication that it's sized big enough for the Texas heat here. This is a 3-ton unit. Nothing special, just a single stage compressor. It does have a variable speed fan inside, but it's more just that it ramps up slowly and ramps down slowly and is nice and quiet. But it keeps up. It's 1,700 square foot upstairs, and this unit, it'll actually cycle off and on when it's 100 degrees out, so it does well. So best I can tell searching around, because I can't find a user manual that actually states what the capacitance is for the running part, is that this should be a 35/5, which is what was in the unit. So maybe I did in fact put the original capacitance in there. It was just the wrong shape of unit that was there. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab myself one of these 35/5s, and I'll swap out the 55/5 that I've got in there right now. And we'll see if the wattage changes any, because I know if you have the wrong run capacitor, you can be pulling too much current because the capacitance isn't matched to the compressor motor.